Please rise for the pledge. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we will call the work session to order. We have an agenda, so we're going to move around in the agenda a little bit because of a delay of one of the individuals for one of the items. So we'll start with highway.
Sounds great. This year, Christina passed out a couple additional papers just because these are the ones that we look at versus IFS, so they're a little easier for me to follow. So if you look at the highlights list, which is the Word doc with the two columns, and then 2026 budget highlights, that's kind of the overall breakdown, I would say, of our budget. Receipts, money we're hoping to get in, includes what we're asking for the tax levy this year, our transit sales tax revenue, existing revenue, reserve revenue, and then disbursements, what we plan on spending that money on, payroll, and then equipment purchases is a big major item this year in our budget, and some building upgrades in that as well. And this doesn't include like our state aid dollars that we're getting. This is just county breakdown, county levy dollars. The state aid projects we have broken down kind of in a separate area, just because it's money that we're gonna get and we're gonna spend, but it doesn't really affect what we're asking in terms of the tax levy. So kind of some major, I guess the major items, as you can see on this, is equipment for next year. We'd like to replace one of our loaders. I was telling Christina this morning, I forgot to look at the one we're replacing, but it's an old, very old loader. It's like a 19, it starts with a 19, the year of it. So it's 1983 or in the 80s. So it's a very old loader, and it's still usable, but the new ones nowadays, they have scale buckets, and we use that a lot to control. When we load it, we use the scale, and it helps us keep track of what we're using in material, and then also if we're selling any material or we're providing material to townships or something like that, we can track it. And then there's a system in there too, a computer that you can download that information back into our system. So they're very, very different than they were in the 80s.
So can I interrupt in just a second there? So you weigh what's in the bucket, and it's my understanding that's how they measure gravel now as far as yards, by weight instead of volume?
Tons, yep.
Yep, by tons, yep.
So would wet gravel, even though the volume it wouldn't have changed, be heavier?
Wet gravel? It is heavier, but there's like a conversion you can use too. So if you have like a 1 yard bucket, it's like a 1.235 something that you can multiply, and then it depends on, if you have like a sandier gravel, there's a different number you use. If it's rockier, you can use this. If there's a moisture content, you can use a different number too. So there's some variation in there, but
Salt is a different conversion.
yep, and there's salt. Like, so when we measure salt too, there's numbers for that. But too, like, there's compacted volume and loose volume too, so it really depends on what you're measuring and what you're using. But with this, we'd be looking to get rid of that 80s one and then pass down, kind of shift the machines that we have for the location that we need them at. So that's a big equipment purchase. I called around a little bit, and from 2000 to now, equipment's gone up 30 to 40%. Just in 5 years. So it's tough, when you're trying to purchase these big items that, it's astronomical, I think, of what equipment's gone up. It just blows my mind. I was telling Eric Adrava the other day, the first motor grader I brought in Kitson was about 270, and the last one I bought was about 425 when I left. So it's hard to budget for that, when these these traits are going, and it's been about 7% every year since then that they've increased. Also, we're looking at updating one of our tandem snowplow trucks. It'll replace an old truck. We'll plan on either using that truck as a spare, or we'll get rid of one of the ones that we do have now as a spare. Kind of look at the maintenance history of those trucks. Again, they're not cheap, they're expensive. But it's good to update those, I think, more consistently, because they are our most commonly used piece of equipment, and most needed to be a reliable piece of equipment for snow plowing. Also, we have a couple pickups and SUV to kind of rotate through our fleet, get rid of the ones that are high miles, older fleet, pass down. We've had a request from our outlaying shops. Right now, they just have one pickup at the outlaying shop. We've had requests for their duties. If we have an older one with higher miles, to pass down to the outlaying shop, so that they're not having to, they can have more varied in duties. You know, they're not relying on one pickup and then people have to catch up in a tractor or something. You know, they can leave, say, the tractor out and drive in the pickup in the morning versus driving back to the shop every night. So this year on the auction, we're getting rid of one of our, it's like a 1999 pickup, and shifting through the fleet. Trying to stay really consistent with our fleet purchases. As you increase the age and the mileage, you get less for on trade-in or sell value. So we're really trying to hit that kind of sweet spot where you get the most value for your vehicle when you trade it in or sell it on auction.
Well, and we do have a couple of leases that are up at the end of this year, so we're planning on not renewing them.
Yeah, for the
right.
highway department
For the highway,
pickups
yeah.
specifically, we just put so much equipment onto our trucks that it just doesn't make sense for us to then just trade them to Enterprise. And I don't see us getting the value out of those pickups through Enterprise with all that equipment on. I think,
You get deducted for anything if you turn one back in because it has
Not
holes
a-
in the box or something like that?
no, not a deduct, but we're not seeing, you know, if we were to sell them on auction here, typically like a small contractor or somebody would pick it up because it's already outfitted with your toolboxes, with your lights and everything. Enterprise just brings them to like a wholesale auction and they're just letting them go, you know, so even when we just traded in, I Kelly Blue Book the value of what to expect, and it was like 3,000 less than what you should have expected on the value. So I don't really know where they're going with the vehicles or how they trade them in. It just doesn't make sense on our fleet with how we outfit them and how we.
And I think we would hold on to it a year or two longer
Yeah.
than a 5-year lease, and do the passing around.
Yeah.
So we're not ready to trade them when they're due,
Yeah.
is what we're finding too.
Yeah. We still have use left in the vehicles before Enterprise is ready for us to get rid of them.
Do you have the option to buy them at the end of that lease?
We do. Yep, we can buy them out. So you pay down your lease essentially, and then there's a fee to buy them out. You have to pay your title or your taxes or
Transfer, yeah.
transfer taxes and whatnot. So it's about 3,000 is what we've seen on a couple that are due. So we could, and we're looking at buying. We have 3/4 ton pickups at our outlaying shops, and either buying those out or buying them and then using that equity, keeping them a couple more years and then using the equity to then upgrade to something that's a little bit more in use for what we kind of want in the equipment.
How old is the shop hoist you have listed here? Was it installed when the building was built?
Oh, yeah, unknown. It's rusty, unsafe. We've been talking about it for a few years. We just finally got a hard number on it. It's just,
Oh, the way- okay.
yeah, the shop
Sorry,
was.
I was catching up to
No,
where.
that's fine.
Yeah,
I was
it is. It's old, it's rusty. They're getting to be worried at this point.
And I think Eric said too that right now it's too narrow, the one that we have. So when they go up with the underbodies on the trucks, they have to use the skid steer to push the underbody over. So it's not, like, so they can get it up on the hoist. It's something about the width, it's too narrow with the underbodies on the truck. So they're using skid steer to do work that's not very safe. Yeah, so we've had that number for a couple of years now. I think it's been one of those items like that's floated a little bit, the hoist.
So this must be for large trucks?
Yes,
Okay.
yep.
'Cause I was thinking about at the shop, we bought hoists. They were like 10% of this cost.
Yeah, it's a big piece of equipment in the shop right now.
This is the one that the tractors and snowplow trucks go up on.
Okay. Thank you.
Another thing, I guess, just going through the list is, we had I'm talking to some counties and we had this sales rep come and the safety light board. I don't know if you've seen them. They're actually really unique. This one specifically, it's a big light board, that fits on the back of pickups, and you can put messages or you can arrows or delineators or something on the back, and you can say slow down, or you can say, you know, left turn lane closed or left lane closed or something on there. And I think it's a really unique safety item to add to our fleet, especially for this type of terrain in this area where they're, you know, crack sealing maybe on a curve, you know, that's a horizontal and a vertical as you're coming in, so you don't have that really update to give to the traffic to say, hey, slow down, there's road work here, you know, we really want to catch their attention and get their attention. These are nice because they can move around to pick up, so you're not just solely stuck on one truck, you can move them around. Red Lake County, we talked to him, he purchased the same one that we're looking at, and he really likes it too. He's very happy with that purchase.
They're considered a trailer type message board instead?
I guess
Something
I
that can
haven't.
be pulled by anything?
Yeah, and that's, I mean, I haven't looked at that kind. We looked at this one just because they said of the ease of moving it from pickup to pickup. They said as long as you have the headache rack, which a lot of ours do with the lights on it already, you can just bolt it to that and just move it. And then it's nice that it's by cell phone now. I mean, their technology advanced more than I am, but they're really unique, I think. And I think that's the moving forward, I think that's what you're gonna see a lot of these counties and even MnDOT, they've been talking about getting a few. I was just at a state TZD meeting last week and we were talking about these, and we mentioned, you know, being called out by the sheriff's office if they need traffic control or something. A couple of times it's happened since I've been here, and this would be a very excellent item to have, you know, even for their use, to if they need to close a lane or something, or get people's attention. They're really handy. Let's see, what else? A Trimble, that's kind of what we just purchased through Survey this year. We purchased a new one for Survey, and then looking at our engineering ones, they're the same type of model that we just replaced. They just get old and obsolete. You can't use them with the new updates. They get expensive to update. And then another item that was requested was like a UTV, a small side-by-side for engineering and then maintenance also to use. Engineering specifically, they talked about staking long stretches of paving roads, like 13 is 9 miles, and they said, you know, you can load that up on a small UTV and ride in the ditch kind of, versus being in a pickup, having to open the doors each time, and it's a lot more convenient. And I've staked with it. They are a lot more quick, and you can mount your GPS directly on those. They make mounts so you don't have to get out and get in and get out. You can just go. Maintenance, same thing. They talked about seeding when we seed turf establishment, or when they're out having to check beaver dam areas or locations like that. They just said it would be something that would be useful to the fleet. So that's kind of the major equipment that we had this year. And then just some other like small building items we had. Nevis fuel facility upgrades. We share that facility with the school. It's an old system right now, and we can't talk to it with the system that we currently use on our field facility. So we're partnering with the school to update it to, I forget what the software is called.
Yeah, right now, I have to depend on their IT department and their transportation director to meet me every month to download end of the month transactions, to do my billing. Park Rap, you know, we buy all the fuel for that facility and then bill the school back what they use and cost ourselves what we use. So it's beginning to be a dinosaur of a system that we can't remote into. Their IT guy thinks that it'll be much more time efficient if we can remote in. So it would be a new card reader, kind of like we have at Park Rapids. And they would sign up with a username and a vehicle through me, and I would be able to download it all from my computer. So well, they're thinking about half, so that would be 10,000 for us.
And then also at the Nevis shop, some plumbing issues, some old fixtures and fittings. The pipes are very small, they don't get good water pressure, so we're looking at just doing some upgrades to there for just better use at that shop.
Is that just a rough estimate?
We did
Or have you
have
talked to
a
anybody?
contractor come in and take a look at it. And this was end of last year that he quoted it. And it was about 4,500, but just with inflation, I think, and then,
Well, and they wanted to add a couple of hose fixtures so that they could wash more than 2 trucks at a time.
yeah, so just a little bit of additions. We did raise that just a little bit from what the quote was first received. And I guess the only other main changes on our expenses is the payroll side. At this time, I'm not looking at filling. We have a empty engineering tech 2 position. I don't foresee a summer like this summer for construction in a long time, I hope. It's extremely busy, and our guys are doing excellent. They're doing great. But I don't see the need right now to have that 5th technician. So we wouldn't be filling that one, and then I'm looking at possibly just doing one summer, either like a internship or like a summer help position that can assist on projects, versus right now we have 2 positions that we try to fill every year. It's very hard in our department, especially the engineering, to find these summer help kids. And I think maybe gearing it more towards like an internship or something might help pull from like a college or something, a kid who is going for civil engineering or civil tech to come and get some experience at the county side, which in my opinion is the best side to get experience, because you see it all. You see from start to finish a project. But that's the other big major change that we're looking or projecting for next year.
At a 500,000 tax apportionment increase from last year, what percentage is that over last year?
Oh, it's a little over 14.
Yep,
14%.
14. And this is actually, we actually looked at this kind of over the last, well, gosh, it's 13 years. We've looked at kind of the percentage increases. And it seems like a lot, 14%. That it is a lot. It is. I'm not going to lie with that. But we saw just through, if we would have stayed on a trend of every year doing like a 2% or, just keeping it consistent, we would have been right here at the 4. But there were years, that was a lot of zeros, a couple years that were -6%, -2%. So they went backwards kind of in their ask. And so it's not, every year's not been like a consistent, it's just been kind of what we needed every year. And this year, yeah, it's a big number. I'm not going to sugarcoat it at all. It is a big number.
You may not understand why that is,
Yeah.
too.
Yep, there were years, yep.
It was sold when we did the sales tax increase that would be used to offset and keep the levy low.
Okay.
So that's the rationale behind that. And just the broad overview that we're looking here too, when we look at our first budget of all the requests that everybody made, in order to fund everything that everybody's requested, we're talking 16 to 20% levy increase.
Yeah.
Not gonna
No,
happen.
no, that's huge. that's very huge. No,
I think too, we've gotten to the point where we can't buy equipment or payroll with the transit tax too. So it's caught up with us, you know. Yeah, we can definitely fund projects that we aren't able to fund with state aid construction and federal grants that we might get, but we're seeing it, and that's kind of why we wanted to highlight the equipment purchases. That's really caught up with us there.
Are there any quality used equipment available that you know of?
I had this conversation actually last week with Eric. He's been getting the quotes and stuff for equipment, and you know, we talked about a loader, like a quality used loader, and he said essentially like you have to have approval and be ready to buy as soon as you
Yeah.
do it, because they go so fast that it's almost impossible, he said, unless you have just a credit card almost that you can hand out to hold these. He did say that, you know, there is opportunity with a loader to downgrade the model that we originally requested, and he said it should work just fine for our needs. So that 365 could possibly go down, you know, to say more around the 300 mark. And same with a motor grader, you know, when we ask for a motor grader eventually, that one is one that I would like to get a used motor grader, just because we don't use it. Like other counties use it, I guess I'll say. We don't do the township, we don't do a lot of snow plowing with them, so we don't need, you know, the fancy bells and whistles of the motor grader. I'd prefer almost to do a used option of a motor grader. A snowplow truck, I would never buy used, just,
And actually, final quotes came in on that, and the quotes were actually 335, so we were pretty close on our budget.
Yeah.
But
I think that's just one piece of equipment that you need reliability on, and I don't trust. I don't know. There,
Even new ones don't run all the time.
yeah.
lately.
It just, you know, I told Eric this my first year in Kitson. We had bought a used John Deere motor grader, and within that first year, we were replacing $60,000 worth of transmission, I believe, because it had metal filings in it. And I mean, it could happen anytime, but you know, especially on a new one, you have that warranty to kind of back you up on it.
These new ones have the technology where it'll tell you maintenance items that might be wrong with it.
They do. We have a system that reads it. Too, what we're learning coming down the pipeline is there's these new. Well, I guess I don't know anymore with the government what's going on, but these emission standards, and that these trucks are having to meet these emission standards, and so going forward, you know, if you purchase new, they have to meet these standards, and it's unfortunate, I think, because the price is going to drive up with them, but just to be compliant with standards and whatnot. And again, I don't know if that's changed in most recent history, but that's what we just talked to the Mack dealer who we get our trucks from, and he stated that too.
And even heavy equipment has gone that way.
Yeah, it's
Loaders and motor graders, and the emissions have been a huge push,
Yeah.
which increases the cost, which decreases the reliability.
right.
as
And
well,
I'm hoping that we're not to the point where we're going to start seeing electric fleets. I'm not ready for that. I don't think anybody is up here, but I've seen that coming down the pipeline too. I've seen a lot of grants and stuff out there to try to get an electric fleet, and I don't know if I agree with that yet.
I think that
think-
probably won't happen in the current
No,
administration.
I think we're chasing the cart faster
I know there's
than
some
the horse.
counties that took advantage of some grant monies to buy all electric pickups to
Yeah.
run for their survey or their maintenance crews, things like that, but they're probably not spread out.
I mean, we're a
all
small
that
enough
far.
county where I wouldn't feel bad having to drive to pick someone up because their car wasn't charged, but I mean, could you imagine Beltrami County like going oofta? I don't have a lot of trust in them yet.
Well, I'm gonna ask you the question, if there was anything on your list that you could do without this year, what would those things be?
Let's see. It's a tough
Is
question.
there anything that can be deferred for one more year in order to try to get our budget numbers the way we would like them?
There is. I mean, we can definitely
Just
make some
consideration-wise,
concessions
anyway.
and some considerations. I think I'd almost like to hear, you know, after your review, you know, and maybe you guys talk about it later with the whole budget as a whole, but, I'd almost like to hear more of a dollar amount maybe
Okay.
that you guys are looking for versus a piece of equipment, because, you know, I could cut, you know, 2 pickups fine, versus like pulling the loader, you know? If I can make kind of concessions on smaller things that maybe are more wish list items and something that I'd really like to see us continue updating the fleet. So that might be helpful if you'd be able to do that. I could definitely look and we can consider some things.
Thank you.
I'm just curious, are the rest of the departments happy with their lease agreements?
Lease agreements work well for basically everybody else. They do for the general carpool. That's where they make the most sense. I think they still work really well for law enforcement just because of the miles we put on them and turning them over. The reason that the highway could be more effective if they own them is they don't put the same number of miles on in a year. So we're not turning leases in 3 years like we are with law enforcement. So we've had brief conversations and said that if highway decided that they wanted to go a different route again with that would make sense.
So you asked for a number. Our initial review showed it staying the same. And I get where you're coming from, because as long as I've been in this chair, highway's been really good about not raising the levy. So if I threw a number at you right now, it'd be 3650, 3,650. And I don't even know if that'll work, because the whole big picture's kind of
Right.
not looking real good right now, and we got a lot of work to do.
Yep, and that's understandable, and I get that. Yeah, I just.
Well, and
We can't keep it stagnant forever. We just can't.
No, and I, you know, talking about, you know, the sales tax and stuff, and, I did a lot of research on this, and it's, I think that's not a misconception, not on your part, but across the whole county, is that money can only be used like on projects versus the wheelage tax, I think is maybe what we were thinking of, is that one can be used for capital purchases and whatnot. But no, it's helpful to have that number, and it is a tough year with budgets, and I see a lot of input from the state of what everybody's going through. It's across the board, I think. All counties are kind of sitting in a tough spot right now with the ask from the federal and state government.
well, and too, Jeff, like you had mentioned, maybe there's another fund, the capital asset fund that is already levied for capital purchases. You know, maybe it's something where, yeah, we do the 3.65, but have some help from that fund this year, or that way the levy stays the same.
There's, the first levy summary that you saw showed everybody held to their 2025 levy, and then it showed the gap, right? And the one that I'm working off of now shows covering everybody's levy request and showing us needing to cut 2.5 million to get to our 7% goal. So there's 2 different ways of looking at the same number. The truth of the matter is, there's gonna be hard conversations everywhere. So I think that, you know, for now, we're obviously gonna be sitting down and spending some time working through all of these. This might be just a good high-level overview of where they're coming from. I always appreciate the reports that Christina puts together, because they're very easy to read and understand, and you can see it all on one page, right? But I think there's a couple of, there's obviously a lot of pieces that have to work together. Highway has been held to one of the lower increases over the past 7 or 8 years, mostly because they've been good about that, but I also get, and if we're talking about using capital fund, I'd be reticent to start using capital fund on equipment. We did allocate funds this year from the capital fund pool to do some building repairs, and I think it's better served if it's used on the building items than on the equipment items. Do you guys have a new or current 10-year equipment replacement plan?
Just the one that I sent you a couple
Okay.
months ago, but I can extend it. I think it was only for 5 years, but I
Okay.
could extend it out to 10 if needed.
I think if we're gonna take take back on doing the pickups, I think we should probably have that extended out, and I know you've got that, you just didn't include that in the report. So I think it'd be helpful for people to see, you know, how many motor graders we have, when they were purchased, what their expected life is, and, you know, when they're gonna purchase again, and how much more they're gonna cost in 6 years than they do now. I know you guys already have that number. It'd just be a helpful one, I think, to, not just the motor grader number, but the plan. And then I think there is room to use the capital reserves relative to maintaining facilities across all the funds that we're otherwise going to fund with levy, right? One consideration is we've, on the sales tax revenue, we're still underestimating a little bit from actual dollars that we've brought in, and I know that doesn't fix the vehicle issue. And I underestimate revenue every time I can, but this might be the time that we have to make.
We're actually having a low year this year, so that's why I didn't up it from my last year budget.
Okay.
This
Is it,
receipt this month was the first one over 150. It was like 190,000 this month, which I usually see that 2 months ago.
so in 26, we're budgeting for 1.7, and in 24, we collected 1.95. So as I understand it, that the sales tax collected in Hubbard County has been going up. So that's one option where we could look at that. Now that, again, that doesn't help with the vehicles and the buildings, but it does balance a portion of that. So that'll probably be a conversation that we have a look at. And I don't know if we're behind on that collection or,
It is behind, yeah. So like I think the receipt we just got this month was for June.
okay.
So hopefully we have a couple more that are around 200,000. But as of the halfway point when I did budget, we were low.
Okay. Yep, and I can see that. Where am I looking at that? Which one is that showing under? Construction fund?
The 10.385.
No, the sales tax revenue.
Yeah. 10.385.
But which department?
It has its own,
Oh, that's right.
very end.
Yeah, we're,
I don't know the number. Just,
So, you know,
10.385, 10, Department 385. Okay, I'm there, yep.
I'll kind of summarize again, because a couple other department heads in the room at the same time, so I don't have to say it twice. But just to summarize my position,
Yep.
I feel like over the past 3 years, we've been very accommodating to most departments, especially with FTEs. And if we don't slow the roll on some of this stuff, we will be forced to make cuts, and I don't want to go there.
Yeah.
So we have to slow the roll on some of this stuff pretty
That's-
aggressively, or we'll be coming back and having to cut stuff, and I don't think our constituents want us in that position.
And that's one thing I've always appreciated about working in highway is if we don't need the position, let's not budget for it. Let's not fill it. When it comes to a full construction year and we think we might need it, let's budget for it. I just like the conservative side of it, like,
Yeah, and if you look at page 74, Department 320 construction, you can see that the salaries and wages reflect that one less position being filled in 26. So that's already included.
The other thing we need to keep in mind is, you know, there aren't a lot of changes coming from the state in 26. But in 27 and 28, there's going to be major changes. And so as we plan the budget for 26, we have to be looking out, because there's mandated things that we won't have a choice on, that we'll have to pay for.
we were told not to budget for an increase in our state aid maintenance funds.
Okay.
And we never do. And that's where, you know, we can show a $200,000 deficit on our budget presentation every year, but we're usually okay because our state aid maintenance funds can pay for our maintenance payroll. So, yeah, hopefully it's an increase a little bit to help, but.
yeah. And I think, I guess the big dollar items, which it's hard to say when you're looking at a budget like this, but construction-wise, the money that we do get, just to update on that quick, next year we're looking at a few projects, not as busy as this year, which is excellent, but there's the CASA 38 bridge that goes over the Cabacona River, south of LaPorte, we're looking at replacing. Also, doing a FDR on CASA 40 from 7 over to 4. That stretch that goes in between Big Sand and Lake Emma. Also tying CASA 50 into that goes south of Zorba, and then 86, County Road 86, which is a sales tax road. And CASA 30, we're looking at finishing the pavement into Cass County, that's paved, and then it's about 1.5 miles regrade there. So some big projects coming, but again, not as busy as last year. So that's all using either the sales tax or our state aid dollars. So they weren't showing on the highlights portion of this.
You know, and one thing we haven't done thus far is reimburse ourselves out of the transit tax money for engineering labor on a transit tax job. You know, I think that we could do that, you know,
That's an
so that, I don't know, 40,000
Yeah.
maybe,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, so there,
Yeah.
Adds up over time.
we could start doing that now that we have a good bank in there. That would help our bottom line too.
CASA 30 specifically, I was looking at using the sales tax. When you use state aid funding, you have to design to state aid standards, which is a lot more strict in terms of your cross-section, your slopes, and whatnot. And 30, I just don't think we can get to that profile without spending millions of dollars on it. So I'm hoping if we can use the sales tax on that road, that we can downgrade the scope of the project on that, and be a little bit more, cost efficient, I guess I'll call it, on that project. Yeah, it's just, it's through a swampy area. It's just not gonna fit a state aid design plan, so.
I don't recall, but can you do a blend of state aid and county dollars to accomplish a project without meeting all of the state aid
No,
standards?
if
Okay,
you use
all
state
right.
aid money on it, you have to meet the standards.
That's what I was afraid of.
Yeah, it's tough. It's some, you know, these old roads that are hundreds of years old, to try to pull them into the new standard is very tough sometimes. Yeah, that was just quick what we got planned, construction-wise for next year.
So I'll basically be meeting with all these major groups after these preliminary conversations, and we'll be bringing them back to you later again to see if we can find anything that works. You know, if we take some of the capital, the building capital stuff, off of that, we can see that, and then we can have a conversation. And general government, after this meeting, I just briefly want to have kind of an idea, looking at the levy summary. Dave and I had a conversation about one change we can make that seems to make sense for 26. But I'd like to just kind of run through what some of my options are. I might cover some of that at the end of this meeting if we have time, but just know that obviously we're still working towards that goal. But yeah, I always appreciate how prepared Highway is when they come for their budget work, and I know that whenever they do it, it's done right.
Yeah. You guys have any other questions, or?
No, just kind of echoing what David said, over 6.5 years as a commissioner, and Highway's always been, I think, reasonable, conservative, and I appreciate the work that you folks do, especially when the residents, it seems like that's one of the top things on their list, is to make sure the roads are drivable and plowed and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think between sheriffs and highway, it's one of the services that's used by everybody. You know, every resident in the county benefits from the services that we can provide. I won't take credit for the whole 6 years, but, you know, I appreciate you guys saying that. It's nice to hear sometimes some positive feedback, and we'll try. I think we can make that accommodation, and I think we can make the budget work this year.
It's the one thing everybody sees.
Yeah. There's still complaints, don't get me wrong, but we try our best. Yeah, anything else?
Okay, well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And Mr. Chair, it's up to you, but we did tell at least one person that we weren't gonna start with the chamber until 10 o'clock. And
Yeah, I see he has returned.
No,
Well,
there's
the
one-
other one's
there's one other
absent,
one, so-
so,
I might suggest we do look at the law enforcement budget.
Okay, that's fine.
Morning.
Morning.
What are we doing? Yeah, I guess I don't know where you want me to start, but, we don't have a ton of major changes over last year, beyond, wages, and then in the 250, the corrections budget, we do have a significant increase for boarding of prisoners during construction projects, so that's probably the biggest impactful, change, over the five budgets that we have here, the 201, 205, 250, 252, and 281. We did lose our STS grant from the state, which we were able to recover roughly about 70% through an updated joint powers agreement with the state. And the remaining loss to that will cover out of their donations that they received from the entities. We did not renew a TZD DWI enforcement grant under the sheriff's budget, just due to staffing issues. But that position will be, or that deputy will be rolled into an open budgeted position that we had a vacancy in that we just left open, so there's no cost impact there. Other than that, we didn't add any new positions or request to add any new positions. Don't have any major equipment purchases included in any of the budgets, so.
Scott, can you tip that mic a little closer to you? Thanks.
That better?
Yep.
Okay. So, I guess, any questions?
So I put up here, just the general, the levy, actual levy, history over since 2018. And we had a major bump in, 2020, we didn't have a major bump in, budget for law enforcement. But we had a major bump in spending. You'll remember we had the Enbridge issue, where we had quite a bit of overtime, and then we had to add additional jailers because of our average daily population was up. I think we add 4 or 6 positions that year as a result of that, mid-year? And that really, and then in 2022, we had a market adjustment for our corrections staff. So 2023 to current, 2 years in a row, we got to a big jump in what it takes. And again, public safety is our biggest expense, and it's funded completely by levy, right? They generate $1 million worth of revenue over the course of the year, and the rest is on the county. 40% of every levy dollar, county tax levy dollar that people pay goes into this fund. And I did a quick survey of other counties, and that's typically true. Typically true that people's, their budget is 30%, it's 30% of the budget and 40% of their levy is a pretty round number. So ours is not significantly different. The 26 preliminary number, if we just fund everything in there because we don't have a fund balance to, they just work off the general fund balance, the preliminary ask is 9.4 million, which is a $900,000 increase. 306, Scott mentioned, is an operating expense because of the work that's happening in the jail. That's the estimated dollar value of boarding out our female prisoners while we're doing the work in the jail. And Commissioner De La Hunt mentioned that might be a good item that we could use one-time capital funds because it's kind of building related that we're incurring that expense to offset that for 26 and 27 while we're doing that. The balance of that $900,000 increase, if you take that out, is just cost of living. It's the same number of FTE, it's the same number of staff taking the same benefits. It's just cost of living increases. So The couple of conversations that Scott and I had yesterday were about the nature of how we do our work. We have a lot of overtime budgeted in both of these departments, and a lot of it is the uncertainty of the work, and a lot of it is the way we have it scheduled. So in '24, I think we showed 8,000 hours of overtime across 201 and 250. And a good portion of that we can't do away with. But if this were in another department, right, and we didn't have to be there 24/7, we'd say no overtime. But we have to be there 24/7, so we have to say, what can we do to try to limit the overtime that we're using? And if we have 8,000 hours of overtime, what can we do relative to a schedule change and a staffing change? If we paid 8,000 hours at regular time instead of overtime, it would be a significant cost savings, right? I think the average wage in that department is, I'm not looking at it right now, roughly with benefits, like $38 an hour. So if we're paying $38 an hour for those 8,000 hours versus paying $60 an hour for the same time, and like I said, there's a good portion of that we're never going to eliminate. And changing the budget in an arbitrary way is just going to mean that they're going to overspend. The good news is, in the last couple of years, they have spent their budget or slightly less. So we've been carrying it, we've been making it work, and they've been meeting those goals. If we just reduce the amount of revenue that we put in there without addressing the other issues, they're just going to overspend, because there's not an option there. So there's very few moving pieces here. Scott and I talked yesterday about coming up with some strategies relative to reducing some of the overtime. If this were the highway department and we had 1,200 hours of overtime because of snow plowing or heavy stuff like that and we had to do, I'd suggest we need another FTE, because that one person at straight time would cost less than those 10 people working that much overtime. It's the same situation, doesn't solve the issue in law enforcement. We have to really take a look at our schedule and see what we can do. So it's going to take a little research to come up with a recommendation there. And I don't know if we're going to find one. When I talk to all the other administrators, our law enforcement services are operating the same as everybody else's. That's kind of the cost of being in this business.
I guess one way to reduce it is if everybody was more lawful.
Right, yeah.
What a good idea.
Everybody what?
Was more lawful.
One question I would ask, Joe, is
That would help.
how much would the average daily population have to change for us to be able to staff at a different level in the jail?
At a lower level?
At a lower level?
The way the jail was designed, it's hard to go back at all, because the DOC says we have to staff 5 posts. So it's not so much numbers, it's just how the jail was designed to begin with.
We'd just be taking on inmates from other counties, hopefully then, and generating revenue and
Yeah.
stuff.
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah, so
Which in the past we've been successful at, but obviously this upcoming year, it's not gonna be an option with the construction going on, so.
Has there been a lot of interest from neighboring counties?
There really hasn't. There seems to be an excess inventory of beds right now in the state,
Well, that's a good thing then.
maybe. Depends if you want to generate revenue or not, I guess.
So, one question, is that because people are being arrested in counties and then just being put back on the streets?
I think it's probably partially that. I mean, that's definitely something that's been happening a lot more lately in the last few years.
Yep.
But I also think that there's been a lot of construction projects over the last 10 years that have
Yeah, there is.
addressed a lot of
Capacity.
capacity.
And neighboring construction projects, yep.
So we've had years in the past, maybe not the last several, but we have had years where we've generated $500,000 in revenue from boarding inmates of other counties. And again, that's just a shot in the dark. We just don't know who's gonna need the bed space and when, so But I do know for this 2026, the only revenue we will have is with our state inmates, because we just don't have the capacity or won't have the capacity to board for other counties, so. I believe we did lower that revenue line item to reflect that.
Yeah, we
I think
kept
we
it the
just,
same
I
or
think we just covered the state inmates in
Yeah,
our revenue line item for boarding.
So I do think in hindsight, the 360 grand to house the inmates while construction is going on could have easily had been, in hindsight, rolled into as a construction expense, because that's what created it. But that horse is gone, so being it's a one-time cost, maybe using capital funds, Jeff said, is probably a prudent thing to do with that piece. And it wouldn't be a stretch to argue that that's part of the capital project.
You always have the opportunity to allocate those capital funds as you wish. We're just cautious not to allocate them on a permanent basis, because then they're not there, right? We need to have those funds available for future and upcoming projects. And if we just allocate them to, say, new debt, they're gone for 20 years. So, but in this case, because this is we're substantial completion in September of 27 for the total project. So we're looking at about a 18-month, 20-month need to outsource board those prisoners. That might be a really good use for that in this year.
Besides housing them in a different facility, is there gonna be additional costs, transportation, staff time, anything like that that we might take a hit on?
Not any significant costs. You know, we'll have to transport, obviously them to Becker County.
Yeah.
But I think if we plan with Becker County, I think we can get it done in probably a day or so, less than a day.
and it's only the females, so if you don't arrest
Yeah.
any females, then you're not transporting.
Yep. And then I suppose there's gonna be, well, most of them do remote, court now,
Remote
so the
court.
facility there could facilitate that on our behalf?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
We may have some added medical expenses,
You know,
potentially.
Mhm.
But again, we just don't know what that may be.
So I do have a question. If you transport a female prisoner to Becker County, and then they have to go to a medical appointment, is Becker County able to transport them just to a facility there in Detroit Lakes? Or do we have to send staff to pick someone up from their jail facility, take them to their appointment in Detroit Lakes, and then return them, and then come back to Park Rapids?
Becker County's really helpful in that regard. If it's something that's gonna take a day, they gotta transport a long distance for a weird appointment or something, they might ask us to do that. They might say,
Okay.
we don't have the staffing for that, but, they have good nursing and medical there in the jail, so 90% of it's gonna be taken care of in
Okay.
the jail anyways, so.
All right, thank you. Any more questions for them? All right, I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
We will go back to item number 1.
Well, thank you for buying a little time as we finished up board meeting this morning. We had a guest from the Minnesota Chamber, so I appreciate the opportunity to complete that first. Jeff, were you able to pull slides up and share those as we go through?
Yep.
Fantastic. Well, first off, good morning, everybody. It's delightful to be here as you talk about budgets and spending money and all of those things. Spending money is always so much more fun when you don't have to cover it with tax dollars. So I appreciate all of the work that you do into researching all of these difficult topics and making those difficult decisions for our area, because they're not easy. And the reality is there's only so much money, and you got to spend it wisely. So kudos to you, Viv, for everything you do and to guide this ship, because it's a huge endeavor. So thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit this morning, and just to kind of refresh everybody as Jeff's pulling those things up. Goal today is to talk a little about the impact of tourism and the visitor economy on Hubbard County. And just, obviously we had a lot of conversations last fall and early last winter. I think it's one of those things where over the last 7-8 months, we've been doing, continuing to research and talk to people and educate different stakeholders, because the issue's not going away. And so goal today is to kind of refresh that conversation, share a little bit of the research that we've been doing, and kind of broaden the scope of this discussion beyond just lodging. I think we had a lot of conversation about lodging, and lodging's a critical portion of the visitor economy. But I'm going to share a little bit about why it's important, and then also how it impacts everything else. And then take another step further and talk about the entire economy and the impact marketing our area has on that. Because this group's done an incredible job of investing in housing. Super grateful for that. One of the consistent issues that we have is bringing workforce into our area. And the two, we hear frequently over and over that housing's a challenge. And so from a broader economy, marketing our community and pulling people in and building that housing, it's a critical partnership. And so I want to have a little bit of conversation about that as well.
You sent that as a PDF file, didn't you?
I did,
Okay.
but that's all right.
I was trying to open with PowerPoint.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, I think that's kind of the goal of the conversation today. And we have a few different graphs, and I'll as we get that pulled up there as Jeff's pulling it in now. One of the things that we invested in was a company called Placer AI, and it's a software for really tracking mobile analytics. But it can be really utilized to track visitation. And so we've done a lot of investigating in terms of our area and where visitors are coming, where they're flowing, et cetera. And want to share a little bit of that data and just kind of frame what our local economy looks like, as well as some data from Exploring Minnesota about how people are spending money here and what that looks like compared to other northern recreational counties, just to give us a scope of, what does our visitor economy look like? So Jeff, if you go ahead a couple of slides to that first graph, there we go. If everyone can see that. So this is data from that Placer AI. And again, this is mobile tracking data where they take a small scope of the population and then extrapolate it out from there. And they're very, very accurate from a trend standpoint. So we're looking at trends, not necessarily specific numbers, but we're looking at trends over time. And this is visits to Hubbard County over the course of an entire calendar year. So you can see the years at the bottom there. And you can see how 2020 and 2021, we saw fantastic growth. And then since then, we've yet to reach 2019's level. And that trend is pretty consistent when you look at the city of Park Rapids as well. So the one difference is that there was skyrocketing growth in Park Rapids in 2021, and we've had consistent decline in 22, 23, and 24. And I think the current concerning part of that is we're continuing to decline. 25, again, Park Rapids is tracking down 3% on visits, and Hubbard County 5%. So when I hear earlier that sales tax is tracking lower, it's not a huge shock to me, because there are fewer people coming here. And so we're kind of losing that market share as we benefited from that, from COVID-19, that whole remote work component, we benefited significantly. And then in addition, you got the 2021 spending spree where people were traveling at an unprecedented rate. And then on top of that, Enbridge. So we had some really nice, kind of lucky things that fell into our lap and we benefited from. And since then, we're declining. And we're kind of just trying to hold on. And that's really concerning, I think. If we go to the next slide.
What defines a visit?
It's basically if somebody comes into an area and spends a certain amount of time in there. So, there was a note on that slide that says that was specifically looking at people that came from over 50 miles. So they had to come from over 50 miles outside Hubbard County, and then spend at least 10 minutes at a single location within Hubbard County. So if you just pass through, they're not accounted for. But if they would have to spend at least 10 minutes within Hubbard County's borders.
You can track that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, yes.
Do you have one of these? All that data comes from location services.
The good news is, Tom, is you certainly have the ability privacy-wise to turn that function off. However, we're grateful for all of the people that do not and allow us to track them and have some of this data.
Did you have a question, Chair?
That was it.
Okay. I just have one little brief question. Is there any way that last graph that Jeff had up there, is there any way we can compare that to other counties?
Yes.
It would be
Absolutely.
interesting to see if other counties are somewhat having the same thing going on, and then we could contrast and compare to counties that are spending, do have lodging taxes and all those types of things, so that gives us a bigger picture, even in the region, to compare to.
Yep. Yeah, and I'll share a little bit of tracking some of that spending component here in just a couple of slides. But yeah, we do have the ability to track the visits. We just, I think the question is always, which ones do we want to compare ourselves to? And so I'll share a couple of examples later, and we can talk through that. I'd be glad to share additional data on that. We have access to that software, and it's just a matter of, if there are certain reports this group wants to see, I'd be glad to pull those.
Okay.
I'm kind of curious too. I know that in 2021, I think it was those years, we had a record number of sales and a lot of people that stayed in Hubbard County. So I'm kind of wondering, of these visitors, how many of those visitors turned into residents?
Do you mean property sales?
Yeah.
Is that what you mean? Yeah.
Yeah, that is a great question. Is if someone spends over 30 days, so if they bought here, they would no longer be tracked as a visitor.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably a small number. I mean, when you're looking at hundreds of thousands of visits, and we've had how many residents added, I know it's a small number, but.
Yeah, and so I'll touch on the resident piece a little bit, and you'll be able to see kind of what that growth from a resident in migration has been as well, because I think that's a key part of the conversation. Going to this next slide, we're looking at, rather than an annual component now, this is on a daily basis. So think of this is a line smoothed out over every individual day within that year. And you can see right away that we're highly seasonal in the summer months, which we all know. But I also think those spikes are all the weekends, right? So we have a weekend economy to a large degree. We have a pretty significant spikes on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then it drops Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. The other thing that I think it shows is that while we had a lot of conversation about what as we're talking about advertising in that shoulder seasons, do we have the capacity to do that? And I think this very clearly shows. You look at you see the two big spikes, Memorial Day and Labor Day. There are major drop-offs right after Memorial Weekend and right before Labor Day weekend, where all of our lodging capacity is still there. We have the exact same lodging capacity because the shortest season that any property in the area is Memorial Weekend to Labor Day weekend. And there's a significant number that operate from fishing opener through the end of September. And I think it's very clear that it's not a capacity issue. The challenge is we have to expand to new demographics. And the only way to do that is to invest in marketing our area to new people. We are very, very strong in families and have been for a long time. And that is a credit to things that have been built long before I was here, and will last long after I'm gone. But the reality is that if we want to grow, we have to expand beyond that, because that is one portion of the visitor market. And if we want to attract people at those times when families are not available, we have to speak to people outside that group. So I think that's a key part of some of the things that we're looking at and just understanding what our economy is. So if we go to the next slide, I want to put some dollars to this, and this is where we get into Explore Minnesota data of actual visitor spending. You can see the total amounts in direct spending, economic impact, as well as the share of visitor spending on the broader Hubbard County economy. And then we do a little bit, there's some comparisons there in terms of the whole state, as well as what we refer to as northern Minnesota recreation counties. Okay, so those are similar natural resource profiles and outdoor activity, outdoor recreation as Hubbard County. And you know, we perform poorly in those comparisons, and there's a lot of factors within that. But I think it's just good to frame like where are we at today. And you know, I'm going to do a couple of comparisons to Aitkin and Lake of the Woods, and I'll share. Those are the counties that are directly above us and below us in terms of that recreational county component. However, if you were to pick the county above us and the county below us on visitor spending, it is Polk County up in Crookston, Minnesota, and Roseau County. And as we're looking through that data, personally, that's very frustrating, because the natural resources that we have in our county compared to Polk County, and in terms of attracting visitors in Roseau County, like we are set up for such better success. The idea that we're comparable to Crookston, Minnesota is from a visitor standpoint, from a tourism standpoint, is very disappointing and concerning.
Because that's an ag community.
That's an ag
and
community.
a college community.
Absolutely.
I'm guessing they're drawing people from North Dakota? Orlean Highway 2.
I have not looked at where they're pulling people in from. That, you know, they probably do get some from that Grand Forks area. But yeah, having lived up there, I went to school. I did my bachelor degree in Crookston, and great school. Very proud of that. However, from attracting visitors, it's hard to wrap my mind around.
Is Maple Lake in Polk County?
It is.
So they would have one major lake.
One. Yes.
Not 400.
Right.
So now if we go on to the next slide here, I want to share a little bit about visitor spending, and this is where I want to frame that conversation around lodging, okay? And lodging, you know, has been a critical part of this conversation because of the possibility of lodging tax, but they're also critical when we talk about return on investment from marketing, from tourism marketing. And so a resort visitor, and this is from a University of Minnesota Extension study, spends almost $80 a day, and now that's a 2016 study adjusted for inflation, okay, but we're comparing a resort visitor to a seasonal resident or second home visitor. And there is a massive gap between how much money they spend in a visitor economy. And you see those numbers there, but then extrapolate them on a broad scale, and these are, you know, this table is from Explore Minnesota, and you can see you got Aitkin County, which is total, they have the third highest percentage of second home spending in the state. Third highest percentage of second home spending in the state, very low lodging numbers. And you got Lake of the Woods, that's on the total opposite side, where they do great in lodging, but very little on second home. And they're almost inversed. They're almost inversely related. If you're a cabin economy versus if you're a visitor economy, the way people spend money is significantly different. And you can see which one produces the bigger spending in the end. Massive gap. And then I think if we go to, I don't want to rush too much, and I believe this would be in your packet, so you have access to these numbers, and I can share additional details. But if we go to this next slide, then we take that lodging number and we look at how it affects the rest of the visitor economy. And without fail, the higher you have on the lodging side of it does much more influence on how recreation, retail, and dining, those three categories have much more spending when you have a more lodging focused area than simply cabin. So you see the real world effects of that University of Minnesota study. Like these are facts. If we can bring more people in that are overnight visitors that are staying in lodging facilities, they will spend more money in our county than somebody that just has a cabin here. So that's, our lodging area, our lodging right now is 23% of the visiting economy. And we are over 30% of our visitor spending is from second homes. We're the 5th highest percentage of our visitor economy coming from second home spending. And that percentage is growing. 5th highest in the state in second home spending as a proportion of visitor economy. So,
and it's also important to note that we've lost the most resorts out of any other county. So that's
it's a key. So that, and I think so that ties into that component of why there's that fear of losing those beds, and how critical the resorts play in our role in our economy.
Are verbos included in this?
Yes.
Okay.
So again, that's intended to frame the conversations. Now, if we go to this next slide, I think we hear the question: does marketing work? And I want to share this slide because it compares 3 counties that are right next to each other on the Canadian border: Lake of the Woods, Koochiching, and Roseau County. And Roseau County actually is on Lake of the Woods, right? Warroad's right on Lake of the Woods. And you have one county that back in 2006 invested in a countywide lodging tax and took off on a consistently high growth rate. And now in the last 3-4 years, those 2 other counties have had nice bumps because they've gotten lucky and have gotten significant hotel investment where they're adding 60 or 80 room hotels within individual cities. But the reality is that over time, Lake of the Woods, their marketing impact far supersedes the growth rates of these other communities. Now, this is taxable sales per property. So it is somewhat influenced, we try to, the number of properties can, greatly impact some of these scales. So, we have the total data as well. Those spikes in 21, 22, 23 are less impactful on a total revenue standpoint, because like Roseau has like 13 properties. So if you had one really profitable property, it kind of supersedes the data. But if you look at growth rate over a period of time, Lake of the Woods, with very similar resources as those neighboring counties, has really carved out a name for themselves through marketing, through telling their story over and over and over again. Jeff, if you go to the next slide, the next thing that I want to share is that marketing also works on broader economic development. When we're talking about bringing people here to fill jobs, to start businesses, even just to retire here, tourism is the front door of economic development. So as we talk about building housing, which is a critical component, and again, I applaud the work this group is doing in that area, filling those homes and getting people to continue to move here and invest in businesses here is greatly influenced by how we tell our story. We can 2 times more likely just by hearing or seeing our advertisements. 2 times more likely just by seeing ads. If they see ads and visit here, 2.5 to 3.5 times more likely to do those things. So we're talking about significant increases in how we can attract people to our area. The next one. This is one example. Otter Tail County has been a leader in that area of resident recruitment. And you can see here how 2001 to 2016, they were actually losing people on average. And then in 2017, the county hired a rural rebound coordinator with the goal of talent attraction and resident recruitment and bringing people into their county. That was his job. Market Otter Tail County as a place to live, as a place to start businesses. And they've seen significant jumps. Now, part of that is buoyed, obviously, by post-COVID. There's been a broader trend across the state of Minnesota to move rural. But the reality is that prior to 2017, Hubbard County, we had better in-migration or better resident recruitment than Otter Tail, and we're now losing. They're now attracting more people than we are.
They also had a philosophy change in their leadership. For a time, they were content to be status quo, and they didn't want a lot of new business coming in, and so that paradigm has totally shifted.
Which tracks well with an investment in, hey, this is important, we're gonna focus on this, right? So that's a great point, Shar. Thank you. So again, I think it shows this marketing works. I mean, now they've had one of the industry leaders, Eric Osberg's done a fantastic job. He's received an Emmy Award for some of the talent attraction videos. They're really kind of spearheading this work. One of the first counties to really invest in this as a county, and to a significant level.
I also found out when I listened to AMC's the growth trends in rural counties, Otter Tail has a big, what do you call it, advertisement at the Target Center. Move to Otter Tail County and work there. I don't know what it says, but it's paying dividends. So they're being very creative.
Proactive and creative.
Yeah.
Lake Park has done the same thing, and they've had quite a housing expansion that's gone on there too.
Yeah, and they're a bedroom community. They can easily advertise that. Yeah.
So Jeff, if we go to the next one, and I want to wrap it up and be respectful of your guys' time. But when we talk about desired outcomes and goals and things that we're tracking for, I think the first thing is we got to find funding sources. And the reality is this group holds the keys to a lot of those viable funding sources. The two primary funding sources of both resident recruitment and tourism marketing or destination marketing are either lodging tax or county funding, county investment. So, this group to a large extent holds the keys on what that path looks like to securing a strong marketing budget where we can make an impact on our area. And we believe that we can really set some targets, and we listed a few examples of what those look like. We're looking at 6% lodging growth. I think we went through that stat from 2004 through 2019. We were at like 2% or 2.2%, and we've had this nice run, and now we're going backwards again on our visitor account. I'm really concerned that we're going to stagnate on that lodging side of it, and so. Those are some targets that I think we can hit, the component of keeping resorts, and then also that broader economic development of resident recruitment, because the reality is that when you develop content for destination marketing, it's a slight tweak on the message to bring people to live here. All of the content, the ads, the videos, the photos, it's all the same. You're doing slightly tweaked language, and you're doing different placements. Other than that, all of the work's the same. The staff is the same. A lot of that investment and the assets are the same. You're changed. That's why we're seeing so many CBBs invest in this area, is because they're so similar. You just got to do a little bit of tweak in that component, but there's a lot of budget efficiencies from a resident recruitment standpoint and destination marketing. And then, I think the last slide I wanted to share, Jeff, was just to look at what Hubbard County would look like if we would have, this was last talked about in our area in 2006. Lodging tax was brought up in 2006 and nothing occurred at that time. Just to look at what a 5% or a 6% growth rate would look like in Hubbard County purely on lodging, cumulative over the last 19 years. And 5% doesn't sound like a lot, but year after year after year, compared to the track that we've been on, it's gigantic.
So I think I shared this with the board before, but when I was on that AMC training, if you go back to the slide previous and I think immigration by 20 households, and so they really suggested, this was a study done by the U of M and a nonprofit, I can't remember who it was, but they said to concentrate for people moving into Hubbard County, you concentrate on the 30 to 59-year-olds. And here's what attracted this age group about rural living, was it's a slower pace, they liked the schools better, and it had more affordable housing. So the number one issue was not pay and jobs. And then they talked about how if you bring these people in, it also then reverts back to lodging because their friends come and stay. And so it's like a catch-22 from both sides. If you lodge here and then you decide you want to live here, but if you live here or if you come here for a job, you also bring people with you to vacation.
Great point, Shar. The reality is there's a lot of economic development literature going around now that we're entering this fourth wave of economic development where people are determining where they're going to live based on where they want to live, and then figuring out what they can do for work once they get there.
Right.
And we are uniquely positioned to capitalize on that.
Yes, because if you look statewide, we're still in that box of desired places to live. We're just not capitalizing on how to get them here.
I would mention one thing. Last week, we authorized spending $50,000 for bud capping. We do forest management. We have a 20-year plan. We know that all the work we do there today, we're not going to see any results from for 25 or 30 years, right? And marketing and economic development are very much the same. Every once in a while, you're going to hit a home run, like getting a new hotel in Baudette, or getting a new business or an expansion. That's going to happen. But if you're not consistent with making efforts in all those areas, you won't have anything in 20 to 25 years, right? So it's very similar. We've set aside the funds for economic development a few years ago when we made that decision, and we've taken on management of the HRA so that we can oversee that and tie those funds to those efforts. But we haven't done anything relative to marketing for destination and or people moving here marketing. You go to almost any other county, and as you're driving through Lutz heading south, it's a sign that says, "Imagine if you lived here." Right? Yep. And I think Otter Tail's doing the same now, and Aiken's doing the same, and it comes with doing the same thing that Otter Tail did, is hiring somebody whose job it is to do that, or contracting with somebody who's capable of doing that for you. So,
as I've said before, and to all the things Jeff's speaking of, we have the tools now. We created the tools to help facilitate some things happening. But the struggle is we're not telling anybody about what we have. When we did our strategic planning at Heartland Lakes Development Commission, over multiple hours, it just kept coming back to, okay, we're doing all those pieces Jeff talks about, and we've got all these tools now, but it kept coming back to destination marketing. Well, we got to tell people what we have. Otherwise, it's a really slow roll. If you tell them what you have and then you back it up by having those quality of life things, they'll choose to live here, many will. But we're missing this key piece. And no matter what we talked about, we kept coming back to this destination marketing. Without it, it's not gonna really, it's gonna be hard. With it, it's the one missing piece. It's the one thing we can accomplish that could kickstart everything.
And so Derek, when you were talking about people moving here also, and you're talking about, it wasn't even in the cards either for the top 5 of, can my spouse or partner find a job here? You're right, people are picking the spots they want to live and then figuring it out, and so you have to get the message out so they actually realize it's an option.
Have you been getting this information out to the greater than 50% of lodging facilities who were against the lodging tax last time we talked about it?
So we have not done any, we've been very quiet on communicating with the lodging side of it. However, I think we're at a point now where we need to do some broader communication and certainly to the lodging community. But we need to go beyond that. That's kind of where we're at a little bit is this impacts everybody. And certainly I appreciate the feedback of all of our lodging community, and they're a critical component because they're going to be the collectors or would be collectors of a lodging tax if that's the route chosen to go. However, the number of businesses that this impacts is enormous, and it's not just the 55 or 65 lodging community, So that's
And then if it affects everybody, couldn't we do a sales tax instead?
well, that would be excellent. However, the reality is sales tax have to go to a broader referendum vote. So, the reality is across Minnesota, sales taxes really only get passed to support capital projects. That's again, like those are decisions that ultimately fall in this group's, but from what we're seeing on our research across the state is a sales tax to support marketing is extremely rare.
Sales tax are also currently on a legislative moratorium. So the options that the county board has is levy, or the lodging tax, which was established in legislation, many years ago and just wasn't enacted. So those are the options for doing that.
And with a levy, the local taxpayer pays for its destination marketing, and when you go visit somewhere else, you pay for their destination marketing too. With a lodging tax, the visitor pays for the destination marketing,
Yeah,
just like you do when you visit somewhere else.
A year ago, I had mentioned if I had a resort still, I would be for this, but every resort in my district was against it, which is why I went along with them.
And I understand that, Tom, and I respect that. And I think that, from our standpoint, that's what makes this topic very challenging, is we have a significant number of our membership, and we're bleeding some resort members because of this topic. The reality, the really challenging component is that if you look at it from an individual resort, an individual business owner, they may not be in favor of it, and I can understand for some of them why. However, we are significantly putting a stop point on our entire visitor economy solely because of some of the resort components. You know what I mean? Should the resort industry have the final say on something that impacts the entire visitor economy and our local economy as a whole? Like, that's the part that I struggle with from a chamber standpoint. Our role is to look at the broader economy. And to me, if they're, so if you look at 14% of the Hubbard County economy is from that entire visitor component, is 51 million. The resort component is maybe 10 to 15% of that. Well, it's maybe more than that. So let's say it's 20% of that. Let's say the resort, which it's definitely lower than that. It's probably let's say it's 7 or 8 million out of that 51 million is from the resort community. So 7 or 8 million is the entire resort population. Depending on who you ask, it's fair, we had a lot of people tell us that they would support it, and that's why we were comfortable bringing it forward. We thought it was roughly 50-50. I think the results that were showed here were different than that. And it's tough to get at the truth because a number of the people that told me yes privately are not willing to speak out publicly in support of this, which makes it very challenging. But even if you said a significant portion of that 7 million was in opposition, I've yet to find somebody outside of the resort community that's opposed to this. And so if you're saying, so we're gonna, for the 10 or 15%, let's say 70% of them are opposed, which I think is high. I think it's much more like 50-50. We're gonna basically hold hostage the other 85% of our visitor economy, I struggle with that. And so we spent 18 months, we didn't spend 18 months communicating with the lodging, but we spent 9 months communicating specifically with the lodging industry and a lot on the resort side of it because we wanted their feedback. They're a key component. The lodging, like I just showed, they're the key to that return on investment. But the reality is, it's like, can we really hand the keys over that magnified decision to a group that's only 15% of the, 10 to 15% of the visitor economy? I don't know, like that, I struggle with that. So, and that was probably the most disappointing component of the action that was taken last December is we never heard from the broader group. And when I talk to other groups outside of lodging, the response I get is this is a no-brainer. And so I understand the concerns within the lodging, and because of that, I try to be very careful because we represent them as well as a chamber, and I want them all to succeed. They're a critical part of the future of tourism in our Hubbard County. However, they're looking out for their individual business, not for the broader good. And from their shoes, I respect that. And if I was in a lot of their shoes, I might say the same things. But when you look at the broad scope, there's a bigger picture. And that's what makes the whole conversation hard. And unfortunately, my job is to look at that bigger picture.
In light of what you said, would you be more supportive of levy dollars used versus the lodging tax? Or are you not prepared for an answer?
Yeah, let me deliberate on that one a little bit.
Uh,
I'm in, like I said, if I was still in the resort business, I would be for this, because, just that graph that shows how the Memorial Weekend and Labor Day weekend doesn't equal with the peak of the summer. I would like to see those two sides raised up some more, so I would be for it myself. Now, that was a good graph to look at.
I wouldn't be opposed to two, because I know the resorters said, if we implemented something like this to toss that 3% on immediately, doesn't let them really adjust to it very good. I wouldn't be opposed to us, using, say, a portion of our economic development funds to get to that 3% over 2 or 3 years, so that after 2 or 3 years, we're not contributing anymore. It's all set at the 3% good, but we could bridge that gap by maybe going 1% the first year, county picks up the difference, or some of it, second year goes to 2%. We pick up a little more. By the third year, it's 3%. We're out with any contribution, so that you can get rolling right away. Otherwise, it's gonna take at least a year and a half before you even collect any of it.
And talking to some of the resort members, that would be they would be very receptive to the county participating in some capacity. So that is definitely an interest. Is what role could the county play and contribute in some capacity, especially if we're looking at a resident recruitment component? Can there be a way that some of those that budget is shared in some way?
I wouldn't be an advocate of doing it permanently. It's just to bridge the gap to get to the 3% easier, because we're already doing those other things.
Mm-hmm.
We've already allocated funds to that, and they need to be used for the things we're doing, not for destination marketing. Like I said, we're spending tons of money on quality of life things and trying to improve it. We need somebody else to help with the destination marketing, but I wouldn't have a problem bridging to get to the 3% for a year or two with a little bit of funds from our allocated money. But it can't be permanent, otherwise that money's gone for us to access.
And we didn't come here with the purpose of pushing the lodging tax, but the goal, I think the goal today is to reignite some of those conversations and say, hey, this is really, really important, and to refresh on the why, and to how do we work towards solutions. You know what I mean? Like Dave's sharing, it's a fantastic idea. Are there ways that we can cooperatively cooperatively bridge some of those gaps and get to a point where we can get something over the finish line to start making an impact. Because the reality is that the longer we wait, two things happen. One, you're going to need a bigger budget, so you're going to need a bigger egg to start with. And two, if we continue on the path we're on, we're going to continue to lose resorts, and we're going to have less beds to fill. And from a lodging, if lodging tax ever was considered, that you would have less revenue on that side of it. So every year that this waits, the chance of us really making an impact declines.
So the slide to me that was really telling was where we ranked with the rest of the state. And when you look at what Hubbard County has to offer for people to come to vacation, and then where we rank, it's pathetic. And it's really, must be a well-kept secret.
It's halftime and we're down 21-0.
Yeah.
I mean, really, can we resurrect ourselves? Yeah, but we gotta do something different than we've been doing.
And so I guess my question for this group is, when we left last December, there was some discussion about a next step with some sort of an engagement session. We want to be partners in this, but we can't be the only ones. And so, from a next step standpoint, how do we cooperatively find some solutions and bring some people together to find out something that we can make work? Because I think the reality is there's a portion of the resort community that are going to be a hard no matter what. And so you're not going to please everyone. And anytime you talk about one way or another, to fund this sort of effort, there are going to be tax dollars associated with it. That's the only way these things are funded in Minnesota. The question is, how do you get there in a way that brings the most people in support of it and that we can all kind of live with, right? Because the reality is there isn't anyone out there privately funding destination marketing or resident recruitment. It is public dollars. And that's just the unfortunate reality of the situation we're in. The question is, can we make it work, and where does it stand on the priority list? So again, I would welcome ideas or suggestions on how we now continue that conversation and broaden that discussion to the full big picture that it is.
I guess one of the things, like David was saying, using economic development funds to bridge that gap. The problem I've seen with an approach like that is once dollars are committed, they continue to be committed because everyone gets kind of comfortable with those dollars coming in. So it would really be hard to take them away. And these seats can change every 2 years. There might be all different people on the board and just decided, hey, you know what? We're done it. That's it. You're cut off. So there are a lot of complicated aspects to it. I guess I've been running through my head the idea of a hybrid model. Maybe a small lodging tax to help offset some of that initial investment, and maybe some economic development funds to make up the difference to get to the goal that would be desired. I guess I'm kind of open to just about anything in a conversation wise. I just don't know how we're going to get to it,
Especially in the light of the broader budget discussion. I'm not oblivious to that. Certainly understand.
Yeah.
And you could write that strategy from the beginning and have it concrete how it's going to go, whether it's 1%, 2%, 3%. You just lay that all out from the beginning and make it happen.
Are there any other comments from the board? Questions?
Well, I think Derek asked us a question and we have not answered it.
I understand it's not an easy one.
Yes, but Derek, if we need to move forward doing something, because if we leave this, if we just say, okay, well, we'll think about it, we've already thought about it for several months. So I would like the board, how do we want Derek to move forward with this? We have to move forward, because we're going backwards.
Commissioner Christensen, maybe that's a question we can ask after next week's presentation. Mary's going to talk about HLDC and the goals for new housing and the need to support the businesses in town that are looking for employees, but employees need housing to stay here.
Okay.
She's going to be talking about workforce
Okay.
recruitment. And that's another piece of this.
Yes, it is.
I know that Derek talked a little bit about how you don't have to go very far from destination to workforce marketing, and they work hand in hand. But Mary's going to be here next week, talk about workforce marketing, and maybe that's a opportunity for us to kind of close the loop. And
The other question I would ask for you guys, we're thinking about, we're spending $10 million on Deep Lake Park. Who knows about it? How are we gonna tell people about it? Is the county gonna spend money to market? That's what, if it was private, you'd be spending your own private money to market your business. Somebody's gotta market the things we're doing, otherwise, why are we doing them?
And very likely, the gate will be open by the end of the year. Next week, you're gonna see the RFP for, we're gonna be opening responses to the RFP for demolition by the end of the month,
Yeah.
since the funds have been released, so.
I don't know of too many businesses that open up and then just don't say anything that they're about their business. If they do, they don't make it very long.
Yeah. I can attest that the marketing budgets of small businesses in Hubbard County are small to nothing. It's not feasible for independent small businesses to market themselves widely beyond Walker or Detroit Lakes. I also want to note that I opened my business, a restaurant in downtown Park Rapids in 2009, right after the last conversation. And when Derek said if we would have taken action in 2006, look where we'd be. I've been waiting that long for the county to do something to help tourism and small business. And if there's anything that I think a larger organization could do for the small independent businesses, I think it's help us with marketing. Because we're really good at running our businesses, we're really good at coming up with new business ideas, we're bootstrapped and we make it work, but we can't market within a 200 or 300 mile range. I can't compete with people going to Cook County. I can't hardly compete with people going to Lake of the Woods County. And that 4%, 5%, 6% growth, that's amazing. You know how much we could do with that as an independent business? When I was seeing 4% growth, I doubled the size of my restaurant. Since I've done that, it's only been herky-jerky, up and down. Every year is so different. And you don't make expansion plans, you don't make second business plans, third business plans in that type of a climate.
Looks just like an investment graph.
Yeah.
Invest, that's what happens. You don't invest, it's just kind of just.
So, I mean, if you want to hear from more small businesses that aren't in the lodging sector, I mean, that's definitely something that we can organize.
Well, I would invite you to our conversation next week when Mary's here.
Gladly. Thank you. Again, thank you for everything you do and for the opportunity to share today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Budget book.
So this has been Blake's project for the internship for 15 weeks. He will be done with his internship Friday this week and going back to school. And what he's done is, in this budget book, has brought together a whole lot of context that we don't always get a chance to look at while we're making these decisions. So I am going to let him, I know he's going to give a brief overview and then answer some questions about it.
Yeah, so first I want to thank you guys for the opportunity for allowing me to learn and have an opportunity to be a part of this community and workforce here. But getting right into it, so the budget book, the way I structured it was I wanted to have context coming up before you'd look into what the preliminary budgets were going to look like for each department. I felt that was going to be a good like scope of it to show how we operate versus other counties, and then to see where we're increasing or preliminary would like to increase, which we all know that it's not feasible usually to increase to everybody's for their wish list. But so getting into it, first it starts out by just going in different issues that are either present or going to be coming down the pipe from state legislator, federal, and then like economic development, which you guys were just talking about, and then also going in our debt structure of how we're looking at paying that off and how they're structured. And then following into that goes into a bunch of different charts and graphs, about a ton of different information. Could be from history of tax levies dollared or employees for years of service, which I think those are pretty relevant to show the amount of turnover that's been happening within different departments. And I know some of them you got to take it with a little bit of a grain of salt and understand the work that's going on in those, as some of them are higher turnover positions. So then you're going to continue looking through it, and most of, not all of, but most of the population charts we use the 2020 census just because that was the most accurate number we had, whereas most, say you wanted to look at 2024, that'd be just an estimated number. They weren't taking anything concrete. So the last like certified number was in the 2020 census that we used for most of them. So once you're getting through these charts and graphs, you'll start into this section called the budget narrative. And this goes into starting with requests by departments. So it breaks down the different positions that were requested for the departments, the costs that were going to be allocated for that, which not all of them will be, or maybe none of them. Just wanted to showcase and break it down so everybody knew why there was a need for it and what this position was going to be held for. And then one of the most interesting parts that we kind of touched on here that I thought were the different county comparisons about how we compared to different counties around our area, region, and statewide. And one of the things I was most proud of to find out was that Hubbard County has an average of 12 FTE per 1,000. Obviously that's on the higher end, and we have a smaller population, so it's a little easier to accommodate for the population of this, but it does show that we're above average in that for the rest of the counties around the state, which I was fairly proud of that. That just shows you how much time and effort our employees are putting into what they do for their work. And then going into the next one there, it is showing average increases in our levy structure, which is the region average is 7.2, and then we are a little below that. So that's showing that we're allocating the funds and being respectful to what our taxpayers are paying for the levy. And I was pretty pleased to see that when I was looking through that information. And then the next couple of graphs, one of them is going to be the PILT percentage of money we get for the percentage of county acres that we have. And so the state average is right around 9%, a little below it, and we're up at right below 40% for the percentage of county that gets it. And so we're on the higher end of that, and I think that's one of the reasons that Hubbard County is the things that we allow the public to come and enjoy around here. And the state certainly appreciates that when we get a kickback off that for that. So then going into the next section, it's going to be in the summary budgets and just giving a little bit of context showing year over year for the last 6 years, I believe, which is in here. And so that just shows where we're operating for expenditures and revenues. And then going into the next section, you have historic personnel numbers and dollars equated for those departments or expenditures. And so we got 2024 and then 2025 preliminary, which was budgeted last year, which shows the slight increases every year, which are to be expected to a certain amount. And then another one that I thought was interesting, and I worked had a lot of conversations and did a lot of research working with Jane and Gina and the whole HR department, as well as Jeff, to fine tune and figure out where the employees were increasing for FTEs, as we had switched softwares a couple years ago. And so originally there was a couple little errors in there. We're like, why is it showing that we jumped 30 employees this year? That can't be right. And so we were going back into different org charts to find out which ones were actually staffed and which ones weren't in the old technology there. And it's showing that we're increasing at 4.5 or 4.2% on average every year for budgeted FTEs, which is, I guess it's, I don't really have a reason behind that, and I didn't really have much to compare that on, as it's not something we determined was relevant to poll other county administrators on. We did poll other county administrators on the turnover rate, and that we were right about average, a little higher than average, I want to say, when I looking off the top of my head. But then when I was talking earlier about the turnover rate by percentage of departments, like you can see in this chart that solid waste and recycling is higher, as that is a lower end position and in the scale, and there's more turnover in that line of work than say the administrator's office, where there's just been one steady one for a little bit here. And then auditor's department, that's another one I wanted to highlight. That one has been, it's on right in the middle for our turnover department, but that one's fluctuating because there's only 5 or 6 employees in that. So if you lose one employee, that's 18% off the top of my head. So then it breaks it down, coming into more of these charts and graphs for new hires per year, and then the last number was as a date. So you're averaging just about 1 per week that's coming in, but then when you go to the next one, you're losing a little under 1 per week. So the workforce isn't, it's just more maintaining it. I thought those were pretty inverse of each other and doing well for that. And then just a different way to show terminations or resignations by department, and it'll show that solid waste is once again really high, and highway and construction for that is also really high for the turnovers. So then going into the next section, it breaks down the number of employees on the chart, and then a total of 262 budgeted FTEs for the projected end of year, what Hubbard County is going to be employing. And then we go into compensation for levy. Now this one, it breaks down the different percentages for actual total versus increases and percentage of the levies used for it. And then 20-year tax capacity history. I worked with the assessor's office a lot for this to find out the numbers, and we're right when I was looking at different counties, and we're right in the middle, but on the lower end for this, and I thought that was a little impressive. And then the average residential estimated market value has been steadily increasing, with a big jump around that 2021 time frame there. The next section is the debt service schedule, and that's just when we're projected to pay off and finish paying off, and what and how it breaks down for the payments by year for all the capital improvement projects happening, or any renovations that may be happening over at Heritage Living Center. And so then finally going into the capital improvement plan, it highlights there, I think that gives a little context there for if a public person is reading this, they'll see where everything's allocated year over year and what the forecast is projecting to look like. And then finally, we'll get into the preliminary levy summary that was from August 4th, I believe it was ran, and that's where this was created to show and highlight areas that are going to need attention for this coming budget year. And then probably my favorite part about making this is I got to talk to all the department heads for the last 20 pages of this book that I put together, and just to hear about and me being able to summarize how they take pride in their work, of what they're struggling with, what they're accomplishing, and what their department is looking forward to working on for next year. And so the last 20 pages is all highlights and org charts, and then it's got their preliminary budget at the end of each section for each one of these. So that was probably my favorite part, is getting to learn how everybody takes pride in their different job that they do.
That's the piece that I would never have had time to do. And that's the piece that I think we all have our own ideas about what's going on in each of these departments. But I think this is really, these last 20 pages are really helpful as an opportunity, just when you get a chance to read through them. And if you want a paper copy of this, let us know. We'll get this to you if you want. It's obviously permanently attached to this agenda item, so it's there. But I know we went through all of that text and all those forms and all those charts really super fast. So what I would say is now it's time to grill Blake and ask some questions if you have them.
This will be some interesting reading coming up.
Thank you. Thank you for your work.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've browsed through it quite a bit. Well done. Super helpful.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I didn't want to get into it too in-depth so that I didn't bore you guys a little bit and take up too much of your time, but I also wanted to summarize about what you can expect to find when you read this.
So the assignment at the beginning of May, when Blake first got here, was to take the budget book from last year, which I don't know that I think I shared it at one point, but it never really got done because you just get stuck in the nitty-gritty and doing the charts and the numbers, and do a new one for this year. And I pointed to a couple of other counties who do that on, Washington County, Stearns County. I think you took a look at Goodhue's book, because he's got some personal knowledge about how Goodhue does budgeting down there, and was really able to fill in and work very independently on getting this done. I'm very pleased with what he's been able to do and the time that he's engaged with every single department head while he was here. Attended all these meetings, attended all the department head meetings. He's attended all the construction meetings. That was kind of a bonus. Had an opportunity to see what oversight of a major construction project looks like. And yeah, we're actually gonna miss him when he goes, but we're gonna need that chair back pretty soon, hopefully.
What are you majoring in?
I did, so I'm finishing my business management degree, and I also had a minor in healthcare management. But I have one class left for that, so I'm taking that this fall to finish my undergrad. But I had started my master's degree in business administration in May, and so I have 4 classes in the fall and 4 classes in the spring to graduate with my master's.
Working with all these department heads like that, that'll give you a lot of experience of the operation of, well, not just government, but probably even private.
Yeah, it was a really good experience.
Yeah,
I enjoyed it, and I definitely learned a lot.
Well, I'm gonna be reading the whole thing. I just was waiting for your presentation, and now to get into the nitty-gritty of it. All right, thanks.
Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice job.
Okay. That pretty much covers all the items on the agenda, so if there's no more questions or comments, I guess we will adjourn.
And if I can grab the General Government Committee for a few minutes afterwards, talk about a few of the things from today, try to strategize and get those scheduled for next coming meetings.
You need a motion?
Yes,
I'll move to adjourn.
Tom moves. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Ed seconds. And I would say all of us are in favor.